Well, guys, welcome back to this week's episode of the Uber to the Pits podcast. My guest this week is Rob Krider. Rob, how are you doing?
I am doing really, really good. It's an honor to be on Uber to the Pits, so thank you, Chris, for having me on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. I got to give you a little back history of how Rob came to be a guest on the show. He emailed me, giving me a little praise for the show, telling me how much he enjoys it, which I absolutely loved. And he asked me if I wanted to slum it and have him on as a guest. Well, I found out that he, races club racing, SCCA, NASA, For me, I respond back to him and say, yeah, I'd love to have you on as a guest, and don't worry, you're not slumming it, because there's such an importance to club racing. That is how 90% of us started out, was either going through a Skip Barber, Jim Russell, Bob Bondurant racing school, and then going and racing club races. Because we didn't have necessarily the race car, but we could take our cars to the track. We could find some way to get to the track inexpensively. So, Rob, we're not slumming it. We're happy to have you on as a guest, so thank you for joining us.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Chris. I totally disagree. If you're talking to a Honda Challenge driver from NASA, you're definitely slumming it. And the reason I say that is because your guest list previously is just fantastic. Tommy Kendall, Lynn St. James, Willie T. Ribs. I mean, I really, really respect those people, and I grew up watching them race. So to be on the same show with them, I think that's just really cool. So thank you for slumming it and hanging out with a amateur race car driver like myself.
No problem. Well, now that you talked about, slumming it and how you grew up watched Willie T. Lynn and Tommy Kendall, give me a little insight on how actually you got into motorsports and what initially drove you towards motorsports.
Sure. Okay. Well, I am the team principal for Double Nickel 9 Motorsports and lead driver. And if you're an amateur driver, that means you're everything. It means you're the cook, the engineer, the tow driver, the mechanic. I mean, you name it, driver, all that stuff. You do all those things. I always wanted to be a race car driver. I grew up about 25 minutes away from Sears Point in Sonoma, California. Grew up in Napa, and I just knew that I wanted to be a racer. My dad was kind of part of an automotive culture household. We watched Smoking the Bandit and Cannonball Run and Two Lane Blacktop, cool movies like that. And I just always wanted to race cars. Unfortunately, my dad's last name wasn't Earnhardt, so basically there was no car in the garage waiting for me to race. So if I wanted to go racing, I was basically going to have to sort of figure it out on my own. And so I found an opportunity when I turned 16 that you could take your car down to Sears Point, and for $10 you could just do the ET bracket drag racing. So I did that with the only car that I had in my driveway, which was an El Camino. So not the coolest car in the world, but it went down the quarter mile, so I had a lot of fun with that. I realized that drag racing was fun, but I really want to do a little more than that, so I decided to go autocross racing, and I did that with the other car was sitting in my side yard, which was a MGB, which was a pile of British trash junk that I had to restore for a year to get to run, and that car barely even went fast enough to basically, drop off the crappy British parts that were breaking on it all the time. But what I did learn back then was this: you got to take care of your equipment, because at my point in my life, if I didn't take care of my car and I wrecked it at the track, I was having to ride my Mongoose BMX bike back to high school. And it turns out meeting girls while riding a BMX bike when you're a senior in high school is not the method they're looking for. So
I got to disagree with that a little bit, because one of my favorite movies of all time is Rad.
Oh, awesome movie. Great movie.
Crew Jones got the girl in that movie on his bicycle, but he was racing against Mongoose.
But what you learned in that movie was he was a winner, baby. You got to be a winner. So I learned that too. Girls don't like losers. They want winners. So I wanted to keep winning races, any race I could get my hands on. So, I never really gave up. I just realized that I was going to have to race whatever I was driving. So if that was rallycross in the dirt, or it was some gimmick rallies or time and distance rallies, I've done some standing mile stuff, Silver State Classic in Vegas. I mean, anything you could show up with a car and a helmet and like $50 and a license plate, I did that stuff. So I did a lot of street car racing, but I never did any street racing. I do not condone street racing. There's plenty of places to race off the street on the track. So I see you laughing there, because I think you've probably got some miles under your foot doing some street racing. You don't have to admit it to me. It's all right.
I almost being 40 years old, I got to come clean with my truth. Yes, on the Friday and Saturday nights, and even, sometimes during the middle of the week, I would be out there on the streets, and like you, I do not condone it at my elder age. But, when we're young, stupid, and we just want to drive, you gotta do what you do. But I do like the fact that a lot of tracks now have opened up, their Friday, Saturday night drags to help get the kids off the street because, luckily for me, as, a good drive, I will boost ego a little bit. I was a great driver. I was, 90% better driver than most of the guys out there that I was driving with. So I always kind of kept within my limits of knowing what my skill was. But, and I believe my statute of limitations have surpassed, so I have no problem.
You got 10 years, so you're good. After 10 years, you're good. Well, the NHRA still has their street legal drag program, which I fully support because it does give you the opportunity to go to the track and race. What's so great about that is that there's no argument at the finish line, right? Either the win light pops up on your side at the end of the quarter mile or it doesn't. We've all seen a lot of street races where it's over and then nobody even knows who won, and there's the big talking trash and fight, and I'm not really down for that. I want a legitimate win and trophy, and you're not going to get any trophy street racing, so that's why I don't do it.
The other thing about, there's just too many idiots that like to stand right up along the street watching the race from start to finish and knowing how half these guys drive or 90% of these guys drive. One of those spectators is getting hit.
Right, especially now. Right now, the average kid can go out and buy a brand new Mustang or Camaro or Charger, Challenger, and those things have a lot of juice behind them. And, that second gear kicks and poof, they're off in the crowd. We've all seen the coffees, Cars and Coffees videos of the Mustangs leaving. That's not good. So, people a lot of times can afford to own cars they really can't drive. And unfortunately, they prove it while on YouTube, and that's not where you want to do that.
No, because it just shows how big of an idiot you are.
Yes.
So, now, did you ever look at doing any driving school, or did you just kind of go progress through the ranks and then just say, you know what, I'm going to show up at CCA, do the autocross stuff, and then that progressed into going more road racing with NASA and also with SCCA, or what was...
Yeah, so I definitely went autocrossing first and did a ton of autocrossing. What's cool about SCCA autocross is that there's higher levels of it, so you can go to national tours. They have a national championship one time a year in Topeka, Kansas, or Lincoln, Nebraska now. So I did all those different ranks and won some tours, and that's kind of really wonder, like, hey, am I a good driver or not? Am I in the right equipment? How's my car set up? And so I learned an enormous amount about car control and car preparation and really reading the rule book from SCCA. I eventually did go to Skip Barber Racing School at MX5 Cup School at Laguna Seca, which was, probably the best 3 days of my life. Just wonderful. I learned an enormous amount. And for me, it's all about really learning, right? So I always want to be a lifelong learner as a driver, as a car owner, whatever, how to get sponsors, whatever it is you need to know as an amateur racer. I'm always trying to soak that up. And so, I thought I was pretty hot shit behind the wheel, and I certainly learned more and more skills at Skip Barber and going through different racing schools. But ultimately, I still think I learned probably more from all those years of drag race, rallycross, and autocross, just about basic vehicle dynamics than I would have at any school.
And, you talk about learning all these different dynamics of vehicle control and handling the vehicle from drag racing, rallycross, autocross, all the different forms of racing you've done. And that has actually been a very common factor with all my past guests. And, what's your advice to younger drivers or amateur drivers that want to make the next level? Drive whatever you can get in and drive. Because it doesn't matter what you're getting in, you're going to learn how to drive. You're going to learn how to adapt to that vehicle. We have the ability to adapt and be able to figure out changes that we need to make to the vehicle. The vehicle can't communicate with us and saying, okay, I need you to change your way or this or that. We got to adapt to the vehicles. You learn different car control aspects from going from dirt to pavement, how to handle slides. When in doubt, gas it out. So being able to go out and accept any type of driving is such a big benefit to your skill.
100% agree. And my thing is, it doesn't really matter what your budget is. Obviously, if you can buy a 911 GT Cup car, I would say do it. But if all you can afford is a 1977 Honda Civic, there's a place for you to still race it. And so, SCCA and NASA certainly provide that opportunity where you always want to be behind the wheel. And so if I'm not road racing in NASA, racing in the Honda Challenge Series, I'm still running a local autocross for the SCCA in Fresno. So I still enjoy those weekends just as much as I do the full-blown, all the pomp and circumstance of the Toyo girls and the big crew and the national championship event. I love that from NASA. I mean, I think that's awesome that we get the opportunity to do that, but I certainly don't think that's the only thing to do. And I can tell you that, racing in Honda Challenge, I've been able to take a lot of skills I learned from drag racing even in a Honda Challenge because we have standing starts. And so that's a lot of stress. And you're in a 5-speed, you got to dump the clutch, get off the gas, not spin the tires, get out in front of everybody. And I found a lot of my competitors struggle with the standing start. I love the standing starts because I've got 1,000 passes down a drag strip and a 5-speed. So I'm all for it. It's certainly, provided advantage. And, being a rallycross guy, I certainly learned how to drive off the track a bit and get back on the track really quickly. So everything that you do off-road, on-road, circle track, all of it really just makes you a better driver and more marketable. And certainly I've used all those different skill sets, even demolition derby I've done in Honda Challenge because we like to bang up some fenders there. So it's good times.
Yeah, really, and that's kind of the best thing about amateur racing, especially when you can get a large car count in, Honda Challenge, the Spec Miata classes. You really get in there and you have guys that are competing for every inch on that track. Like you guys are getting ready to win the Daytona 500 or the 24 hours
Absolutely.
of Daytona, whatever it is. And it really comes down to the fact of rubbing is racing in that class. And the benefit for me, like when I would get in Spec Miata races, is I learned how to drive the vehicle offline carrying momentum. Because 90% of the time on track, somebody's in my way. I'm not going to, fully purposely bump them out of the way. I'm going to adapt. I'm going to figure out how to get around them. I'm going to have the patience to set them up, carry my momentum offline of a corner that they're not going to expect, and pass them.
The trick is really you're talking about racecraft, and what you get from lots of experience, especially in road racing, is you learn how to set up those passes 2 and 3 corners before. You learn that momentum driving. I had to learn that super fast because I drove an MGB, right? You think I had any power at all? I probably had like 85 horsepower. So
it depends if you had a Lucas generator or not.
It was Lucas. It was Prince of Darkness, But, you learn in every type of racing running. I ran some Nissan Sentras in the 25 hours. I've run Honda Challenge for many years. You've got to really carry your speed all the time. And then when I'm in a faster car, like I've run some Z06 Corvettes and other things, if I have that momentum driving in a Z06, it means I'm just 3 seconds faster than everybody who's just using it as a drag race point-to-point kind of car, which a lot of people kind of default to. So
yeah.
I've heard other people in your show talk about, coming up through a Spec Miata or a low-power car and the skills it teaches you, and I completely 100% agree with that. No doubt about it.
No, and that's my biggest thing is just because you have the money to go buy a GT3 Cup car, don't turn that into your first race car. Don't go do the 3 days at Skip Barber and go, all right, I'm ready to be a pro driver. Let's go.
Yeah.
Because that car is going to get totaled. Hate to say it, but it will get totaled because there's so much more to learn driving a lower horsepower spec car. Because, you get these guys that go in and put the highest horsepower car on the track, and, you get the TTU guys. You have guys show up with LMP2 or LMP3 cars or, Ferrari Challenge cars, Porsche Cup cars. And
they blow by me all the time with the 25, just blistering speed down the front straight.
It's exactly. But how good is your driving skill actually when it comes to wheel racing, when all you know is just getting around the track as fast as you can with no interruptions? Or you're just hitting the people on the straightaway that's easy to pass. What if, Joe Blow going into turn 1 or even turn 2 at Thunder Hill in a lower horsepower car is going to throw you off and mess up your setup for 3, 4, 5, 6 up over the hill.
It happens. No question.
It does, and that's again why I always go back to, if you could get into a Spec Miata, if you could get even Honda Challenge, whatever it is, in a lower horsepower, high momentum car, you're going to learn so much more of that than climbing into a high aero car or a Cup car or Challenge car, GT4 car right off the bat. Yes, you can go race it. Yes, you can be faster than some people, but you won't have the race skills and the track knowledge that somebody that comes up through the ranks of a Spec Miata or a lower horsepower type class.
That's where I think that NASA, the National Autosport Association, has really got their weekends right, because they have all of their HPDE drivers, high performance driving, experienced drivers, intermixed with us road racers all weekend long. So if you come out with your brand new, really kick-ass car that you want to race around, you're going to go through the instructor component, but while you're off the track, you see us road racing. So it really gives people a lot of exposure to the different classes we have: Spec E30, Honda Challenge, Camaro Mustang Challenge, and you can build up through that system. You can also ladder system through. So if you can't afford to go to Skip Barber for 3 days, if you go through the HPD 1 through 4 component, you can actually earn your competition license through NASA. Now, we, as being a Honda Challenge team at NASA, we've actually gotten a lot of volunteer crew members that are just HPE drivers. So they come out, we hang out, we're shooting the breeze, we give them some free beer, give them some hot dogs, whatever. Like, hey, man, we're running this 3-hour enduro tonight. Do you want to throw on a double nickel 9 racing suit and jump over the wall and fill our car with gas? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, because all of our crew is basically volunteer. When you're an amateur race car driver, you just don't have the money to pay for that. So everybody that's on my team is just volunteer friends and family that want to come out and party with us, and I'm super grateful for them, because if it wasn't for them, I couldn't get around the track for 3 hours, because we're going to run out of gas and need tires. So yeah. Honda Challenge and NASA has really combined those two things, where people with really cool fast cars get to see what we're doing, and then I've seen a lot of them jump into a Spec Miata or Spec E30 the next year, which is really neat.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing about amateur racers is that you show up on Friday, Friday afternoon, Friday morning, if you're lucky enough to have the day off and do test and tune and
exactly
get in that, or but during the rest of the week, amateur drivers, you're showing up for your 9 to 5 job, or your whatever it is, because that's what pays the bills.
We all got to pay the bills. So that's the thing. For me, you talked about things you can do for amateur drivers. So one of the things I do for NASA is I write the Toolshed Engineer column for NASA Speed News magazine. So Speed News is a weekly email that goes out. It used to be an actual real magazine, then a digital magazine, and it basically has tips and tricks and DUI things that help young drivers or old drivers or new racers to kind of come up with like things to do to help you be faster on track, or help you with vehicle maintenance, or just prepping your trailer, whatever. So I've been doing that for about 8 years now. I'm immensely proud of the work we've done on that. You can find all those articles at robkrider.com or our website, Team559 for doublenickel9motorsports.com. We have a media archive page which lists all those different stories. And then, NASA's just a big supporter of the amateur racer to help us all out. So they work really hard with contingency money. So, for instance, it's important for us to have like high car counts, because if Toyo Tires is going to give out free tires, it depends on how many cars are in your field. So I've fixed my competitors' cars numerous times on a Honda Challenge weekend, because I need them to start the race, because I need to win that race and then get free tires from Toyo. So it's really a cool environment where all these competitors work together, and we party hard in the pits, and we definitely have a great time. We race hard on the track. We fix each other's cars, and we're all really out looking to have a good time. But when that green flag drops, you would not know the difference between us and the beginning of the Daytona 24-hour. We all want to win the big race. If it's a national championship, I've been lucky enough to win that 4 times for NASA, and it's a big, big race for us, and we treat it as such, and NASA does a good job of making it special for us as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately this year they have announced that the national championship has been canceled. It's,
Yes, my partner at D&M Motorsports, Keith Kramer, texted me. He goes, "Congratulations, you're going to be the reigning champ another year." So I guess by no championship, I'm going to be the reigning champ for 5 years. But obviously that's not the way I would want to win it. I was planning, I would love to have gone to Miller and battled it out with my Honda Challenge brothers and sisters. But
Miller doesn't exist anymore. Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Utah Motorsports Campus.
Whatever it is. All right, you got me there. WeatherTech Raceway, Infineon Sonoma. I can't keep up with who's selling this stuff anymore.
No, exactly.
That's why it's still Laguna Seca to me.
It'll always be Sonoma to me. It'll always be Laguna Seca to me.
It's always Sears Miller. Point to me. I don't even call it Sonoma.
True. That's right. It is Sears Point.
Yeah, it's Sears Point.
Sears Point, and then that Infineon, and then Sonoma. So yeah.
And even to go way, way back, it was called Golden State Raceway for about a year in the I think late 70s, early 80s. So
I thought before Sears Point it was Sonoma at another point too back then.
Nah, it was Sears Point, Golden State Raceway, back to Sears Point, then Infineon, then Sonoma. And they really just changed the name to Sonoma because it took friggin' a decade for us to stop calling it Sears Point, and Infineon got mad. So they decided, hey, call it Sonoma, because they're trying to sell that name, and they don't want everyone to have to go through that process again. But hey, man, I'm a purist. It's going to be Sears Point to me.
Exactly, and it's always going to be Laguna to me. I love when I have to talk to them in marketing or whatever. No, it's at the point. No, it's Mazda. No, it's WeatherTech. Well, no,
Yeah.
it's just
I've been
Laguna.
yelled at during interviews. You mean Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca? I'm like, no, I race a Honda. I meant Laguna Seca.
It's funny because right now there's that Michael Jordan documentary going on, The Last Dance. And one of the episodes was when the Dream Team was in '92 in Barcelona, and he originally just wanted to cover up the Reebok on the jacket, but they wouldn't let him because of his deal with Nike. So that's why you see all the basketball players with the American flag draped over on their left shoulder, except for Jordan. He has it draped over on his right because it's covering up the Reebok logo.
I like this style. That's cool, man. Look for him. I like it.
So,
Michael Jordan.
And, again, amateur racing, in terms of something so similar to the pros, is your sponsors and your partners and stuff, which is a huge thing for amateur racers because most of your racing comes out of your own pocket or, yours and your wife's pocket, whatever it is.
Yep.
And, just like the pros, it takes a lot of money to race, not as much, but, you still got your tires, you got your brakes, you got your consumables, your oils, your gas, busted up fenders, busted up taillights, broken shafts, this, that, How important is it to be able to carry a partnership or, get these sponsors for amateur racing?
It's immensely important. It's probably maybe even more important for us amateurs than it is for the pros because we just don't have the budget for it. So one of the fables that a lot of young amateurs make is that they expect to get a lot more than they can really offer. So, we're all familiar with the term ROI or, return on investment for amateur or pro sponsorship. I never ask, basically anybody to give me something that I know I can't give them more back for. So, for instance, Carbotech brake pads, I've been working with them for a lot of years. They provide me brake pads for my racing team. Now, I don't call Carbotech up and say, I need $10,000 because I know I can't give them $10,000 of the sales by being the Honda Challenge National Champion. However, I know that I can definitely give them more brake pad sales if I win a national championship using their brake pads. I make sure that their patches on my uniform. I make sure I don't cover that patch up when I'm standing there drinking on the podium. I make sure their logo is on all of our team T-shirts and the sticker looks sharp. So even though we're amateur racers, we have to act like professionals if we want to keep those continued relationships working. So you've got to sell yourself. And I've sold like every inch of my car. I mean, because I want to, I don't want to pay for stuff if I can avoid it, but I never ask for much. So generally what amateur people get is product. We really don't get money, but all that product costs money. So we're still way ahead of the game.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is the best way to approach it as an amateur is when you go to a company, a business, whatever, you want to find a company or business that lies in with who you are, what you can market for them. And instead of asking for money, you go, hey, it's going to cost me $20,000 a year for tires. Do you mind buying a set of tires for me? Or do you mind, helping me get this? And we'll put your name on the car for that product. So like you said, with the brake pads, you have Carbotech on there, you get the brake pads, because those parts are expensive.
They are, but you brought up a good point because one of the first sponsors I ever had was basically a tire shop, and I just said, hey man, I don't need any dollars from you. I don't need any product from you. Can you just mount and balance 4 sets of tires like once a month? You know what I mean? And can we bring the car in for an alignment, once a quarter? And I'm not asking a lot for them. And I even said to them, hey man, I'll bring the tires in a week beforehand. I'm not going to bother your guys. If any of your guys aren't mounting, balancing, tires on mom's Camry, you could find a moment to do the double nickel 9 tires. That would be great. And that was a win-win for him because he got a lot of media exposure from us, and we didn't ask a lot from him. Same with we're sponsored. I'm drinking my beer here. So this is double nickel 9 IPA from Tactical Ops Brewing, and so this brewery in Fresno, basically, they're kind of car guys, and they didn't have a lot of money because they were starting out. And I said, hey man, I need some big canopies that go over our cars at the racetrack, and you guys need big canopies for your brew days when you're out, kind of pimping beer and stuff. Let's do this deal. Let's work a deal. I'll design them. I'll set it up. I'll work with Easy Up, and basically it'll say Tactical Ops Brewing, Double Nickel 9 Motorsports, and we'll share them. And so they bought them, and then we just use them together. So it's kind of a cross-promotion deal, sort of outside-the-box thinking. You're like, well, just would be ready to get money from these guys. Well, the fact of the matter is, like, getting shade at Buttonwillow, that's priceless, right?
Yeah.
So, and then suddenly we got along so well with them, and we were so successful as a racing team. They actually designed a new IPA, so they call it Double Nickel 9 IPA after our team. It's actually got the picture of our Honda Challenge race car on there, so that's a super cool thing, right? So we're super excited to have our own beer, and this all came from a simple sponsorship deal where I'm just like, hey man, can we just share some canopies? And then luckily it turned out to be kind of this lucrative thing for both parties involved. So if you can find a niche thing as an amateur racer that helps the sponsor and helps you, you're probably going to get a yes. If you just walk in and say, hey man, I want $10,000 and I'll slap a sticker on your car and I'll just drive in a race that a lot of people aren't at Buttonwillow or Thunder Hill, you're probably going to get the big NO. Don't do it.
Yeah. And, really, because the business is going to be like, well, what's going to be and that's what it is. It's what do I get out of it? I'm investing in your race team. What am I getting out of it by you just putting a sticker on your car with very little fanfare, because that's the other thing about, NASA races, SCCA races. 99% of the people there are there to race, and they're
right.
to crew another car, so they're not necessarily, when the Honda Challenge car guys are out, they're not necessarily lining up watching the Honda Challenge guys go, hey, look, Rob's got that sticker on it. I wonder what company that is. No.
Exactly.
It's going to be, well, thanks for so, and it's done. Well, okay, but what benefit did I get out of that?
So we thought outside the box on that. So we were going to the 25-hour in 2012, and I'm trying to get a lot of sponsors to help us because you and I both know how expensive that race is. That's one season of racing in one night. That's tire, and I ran 2-car teams, so I had tires, brake pads, fuel, everything. So we said, hey, we're going to actually make a documentary film about this race because it's the longest race. It's a crazy race. And so we were able to get sponsorship help because we're like, hey, look, you could be part of our documentary film, Double Nickel 9, in Double Down, because even though not a lot of people are at the race and no one wants to watch that race at 3 o'clock in the morning in the rain, everyone can go to YouTube or go to 559.com and watch it for free. And you can see all the sponsors and people that helped us. So we got more help by basically making our own documentary full-length film than we would have by just giving the usual, like you said, hey, 99% of the people are there. No one really cares. So as an amateur racer, you just got to always think about marketing, how you can do a better job for your sponsors. And we've got a lot of mileage out of Double Down. We've got, lots of views and people love this. It's a great film. And we're super proud of how it came out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, mentioning Thunder Hill, nobody shows up for the 25-hour race to watch it unless if you're a family member, an extra crew member, because otherwise than that, you're in your tent, in the motorhome, in the car, trying to stay warm and out of the rain.
Yes, and it's going to rain. We've proven that every year.
And it's going to be cold. I think there was only one year I was ever there where it didn't rain for like 18 of the 25 hours.
Yeah, the coldest I've ever been in my life is the 25-hour. But, you talk about an amateur racing. The 25-hour is a great thing to talk about because it's off calendar for everybody. It's in the first weekend in December, which means a lot of pro teams come. Flying Lizard Motorsports comes. And for us amateurs, it's really cool to get to race alongside Johannes van Overbeek and all these guys who race in ALMS and have gone to Le Mans. And so we get to rub fenders with those guys. Of course, they don't want us rubbing fenders with them, obviously. They're in a pickup car and we're in a Nissan Sentra. But, everyone does a pretty good job with the differential speeds there and the multi-class racing. But, we in 2012, when we made the documentary film Double Down, we actually beat the factory Mazda team in our class, E2. So we got on the podium. We're just celebrating like we just won Le Mans because the reality is the 25 hours is the Le Mans of amateur racers. So, for us, it's the big win.
And not only that, but it's an extra hour.
This is America, baby. We do everything one more bigger than everyone else, 1 hour longer than French.
That French driving thing, they're a bunch of sissies only driving for 24 hours,
Yes,
we do it for 25
it's the last hour
here.
that counts.
Exactly.
Right. And yes, I peed my pants in that race like everyone else, but that's part of the folklore of racing. It's good times.
Yeah, and it was a great competition this last year. I know Kenton Koch was out there, Ryan Eversley, Tom Dyer, Michael Miller. So
big names show up every year, and that's why it's an honor to be out there as an amateur and rubbing fenders with those guys, like I said.
And it's so cool too because most of those guys, if you catch them like after practice or during downtime, they will talk to you. They'll, you can pick their brain and they'll be more than happy to sit there and talk with you.
Absolutely. So we had the 25-hour. We actually lost a crew chief in the middle of the night. He just gave up on us and left, which is actually in our documentary film, which is pretty funny. We also had a motorhome that we brought with a full black tank, and it sort of overflowed poo all over the paddock of Thunderhill. Volunteer crew members, you're not really complaining. So I remember we were at one race in Finion, and it was a 24-hour race, but it was divided in half. It was a 24-hour Lemons race, right? So we're going to race 7 hours on Saturday, 7 hours Sunday. We're in second place. We're having a good time. And I think it might rain, might not. I'm laying in bed with my wife in our motorhome, and I'm sleeping. And I start to hear water, like, dripping. I'm like, oh, man. Like, I'm thinking, like, strategy, right? I'm like, we got to get rain tires. We got to change the setup, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, wait a second. It sounds like it's in my motorhome. I sit up in my bed, and one of my crew members is at the end of my bed peeing on the floor, just drunk on double nickel 9 IPA, and I go, dude, are you taking a leak in my motorhome? Like, I can't believe this. And he just looks at me, and he's like, apparently. I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here. My wife's like, what's going on? I'm like, just go back and sleep, baby. You don't want to know about this.
We'll deal with it in the morning.
Yeah, I'm going to clean this up. This never happened. So, when you get a volunteer crew, you're just happy that they fill your car with gas all night long, but sometimes they're going to pee in your motorhome. That's just part of not paying these guys. You're going to pay either way. Yeah. I had to mop up some urine.
And, you mentioned the 24-hour Lemons, which is a fantastic event. I mean, one of the most fun events as an amateur driver, even pro driver, you could have. The theme of the car, the punishments that you get if your car's over $500, the punishment for bumping too many people.
For sure.
It is such a creative way to have fun on a racetrack.
Hey, man, I came up through the Lemons ranks. I won the 24-hour Lemons at Altamont. I've won chump car races, 14 hours button wheel. I've won at Fontana. You can say, a lot of people kind of, oh, it's not real racing. You're wrong about that. 168 cars in the rain at Sonoma, that's a real race. And you've got to learn a lot about passing, because if you're in the lead of that race, you're passing 167 other cars for, I've done triple stints, 4.5 hours in a car, because we had a 32-gallon fuel cell in our Lemons car, which they've now made illegal because won the race. So there's a lot of rules in the 24-hour Lemons rule book and the chump car rule book that are my fault, because we were very innovative in our endurance thinking, like big fuel cells and DOT, but actual R back tires and other stuff. They said you can't do that anymore. So hey, we got our win.
Hey,
then we moved on to NASA.
It's like one of my favorite rules that they had of 24-hour Lemons is that if you got caught bumping too many cars, after the first race, they're welding a steel sheet with nails in front of your radiator.
Yes. So talk about that. I used to watch those things, and I'd tell my team, like, look, we don't want to be in here. We do not want to get a black flag and be part of it. You can't win the race when they're welding stuff on the front of your car. So it taught us to drive clean and not be super aggressive, because they're quick with those black flags. So it really does teach you race strategy and clean passing. And, you want to talk about, you don't even have to have a competition license to go in that series. So you really got to be careful. You want to talk about defensive driving. If you're fast at Lemons, you got to be defensive for sure. No question about it.
It's, I will talk about one story getting pulled over, and the officer asked me, why am I driving so fast? I go, because I like to stay in front of the idiots. He's like, what do you mean?
You didn't know at the time that you were in front of him, right? So you called him an idiot?
No, he was on the side of the road. He was a moto cop. So he was on two wheels parked in a driveway.
Right. Half the wheels, half the work.
Yeah. And I was going 15 over, and he goes, but what do you mean? I go, I like to be an offensive driver. I like to be on the game in front of the idiots. He goes, what idiots are you talking about? I'm on PCH in Santa Monica, where guys like to pull illegal left-hand turns pulling into the beach parking lots. They see an open spot, they're just going to turn right there.
Happens every 15 minutes there.
So as soon as he goes, what idiots are you talking about? There's a 4-car pileup from an idiot pulling an illegal left-hand turn. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at him. I pointed backwards. I go, those ones right there.
You've got some paperwork to do there, buddy.
He goes, do me a favor. Keep it between 5 and 10 miles per hour and have a nice day. I'm like, yes, sir.
Absolutely.
But, and that's one of the things that driving on the street that I do I picked up on the track is kind of if you pick up on how people drive. You can see how, someone's driving on the street. You can see how they're maybe swerving a little bit, not paying attention by the way their car's moving. So I'm just at that point like, look, I'd rather just be a little bit faster, stay in front of them, don't have to worry about someone crossing over in front of me, slamming on their brakes, doing this, doing that, and causing a bigger issue.
Absolutely. And, I'll segue right into, so, you had that motor cop giving you a hard time, and obviously I'm an amateur racer, so my real job is not racing cars. I wish it was, but it's not. So I realized at one point, I'm like, well, I like to drive fast. I want a pro ride where someone else pays for the gas and the tires. So I joined the California Highway Patrol because they gave me a car and I got to drive over the speed limit.
Wait, hold on. 1 second. Time out. Dun, 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 dun. All right. We got to get that in for you at least.
But the cool part is that, the California Highway Patrol Academy has their own dedicated full-blown road course at their academy. We have a slick track. We have a huge mock neighborhood where we do Code 3 training. So I was basically in a full-cage race car with a 5-point harness and a friggin' open-face helmet. I'm sitting at this intersection. This guy pulls up, shoots me in the face with a water gun, and calls me an asshole, and then the chase is on. And my job was to chase him down, get his license plate, and really it was the funnest thing I ever did in a car in my whole life, was basically just driving through the driver's training at the Highway Patrol Academy. Super fun.
Me.
Yes,
me.
It's a good time. But all the skills they taught me at the Highway Patrol Academy's driver's training was exactly the same that you're going to get at Skip Barber learning autocross. Really comes to high visual horizon, defensive driving, car control, vehicle dynamics. And so, I obviously slipped right through the training there because I've already been a racer. But really, everything I learned at the Highway Patrol only made me a better race car driver as well. And so from that experience, actually, I wrote a book about the Highway Patrol Academy called Cadet Blues. So you can get that on Amazon or cadetblues.com. But eventually, lots of race car stuff in here and racing stuff, and it will make you laugh. So that's really been my thing. I was just racing cars and writing about racing and having a good time.
Here's a question. Somebody told me actually for the driver's training in Highway Patrol, maybe it's Sheriff's Department, that when you guys are like doing stuff on track for training, you're not allowed to trail brake.
So that's true. So the thing is that you're right. So when I apex a corner as a race car driver, I'm taking the best geometric shape to get through that corner. But the Highway Patrol, they always want us to do a much later apex because they never really wanted us exiting a corner at 10 tenths all the way to the end. And they really didn't want guys trail braking because realize not everyone who goes to the Highway Patrol Academy is a race car driver. So they're trying to keep the basics really basic, like get your braking done in a straight line, eyes up, turn in, and go. And so obviously we were a little more conservative because remember, we're driving out there with the general public, right?
Yeah.
Mom and dad trying to get their kids to elementary school. We're not going to run that 10 tenths effort. We're not going to drive with anger like we do in a race car. And so they were a little more conservative with it. And so, but obviously, I still trail brake on the road, whatever, because it's a skill set that I have. But, that is accurate. But, the thing is the Highway Patrol, they're the best drivers in the world, you know what I mean? And so I'm a Highway Patrolman and I'm a 4-time national champion. So that's good for the rest.
Hey, and Poncherella and John Baker are the best motorcycle riders in the world.
They were. I love John and Ponch, man. I got a poster of them in my office.
Now, do you have, being an amateur driver, I know you have your day job as we just discussed. I know there's also a lot of amateur drivers that are like, I want to move to the next level. I want to figure out how to come up to a budget to go race TCR, TC, GT4. We'll skip GT3 just because that budget's absolutely ludicrously insane.
Sure.
But is it something that's ever crossed your mind? You ever thought about, like, hey, if I could put together a season for IMSA or SRO America?
Yeah, it absolutely is. My partner and I, Keith Kramer, Double Nickel 9, we have done everything we can. There's certain things you want to do. You want to be a participant first, and you want to be a race winner. Then you want to be on the pole. Then you want to get a track record. Then you want to get a national championship. We've accomplished all those goals at NASA, and so it's kind of like, well, what's the next step for us? So we certainly looked at some Grand Am stuff, World Challenge stuff. We like the TCR package. I've looked at MX5 Global Cup. But the fact of the matter is, so you had Drake Kemper on your show before, and Drake and I, we've done some TV shows together as like test drivers. He's a great guy. So I got the chance to talk to him and say, hey, man, what's your budget with six sideways? It's like it's $120,000 a year. Well, I can tell you right now, I have not spent $120,000 in 10 years of racing in Honda Challenge. It just hasn't happened. So that budget is super big. And then I found out a lot of like the World Challenge stuff, you're paying for TV rights. The entry fees alone were just so enormous.
Yeah.
And then the travel was big. So for us to get to Texas for COTA for the national championship, or last year we had to go to Mid-Ohio, that's one race a year for us. And we budget and save money and we get help to get there. But if my entire season is mostly on the East Coast and I got to tow a car there, build it, or just do an arrive and drive, like I just found out the fact of the matter is that the entry point is so far from where we're at. I personally don't think that the driving is that much different. Maybe I'm being arrogant or ignorant about it, that I think I could compete at that level. But I know that some of the best drivers I've ever seen, I've seen on SEC autocrosses, and I think some of the best drivers you're going to see right now are running at the national championship level. But we don't the funding alone for $120,000 for one season. That's just a big, big lift for me, and it's just beyond my means, and so I just haven't done it.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I was actually talking to a friend's dad, and he goes, "Do you think there's a better driver in the world than Lewis Hamilton?" I'm like, "Absolutely." He goes,
he's probably driving a UPS truck somewhere.
He goes, "Well, why don't you think he's racing in?" Because he probably just doesn't have the funding, doesn't know where to go, doesn't have the backing. There's so many different elements that go in place to be able to make it, into Formula One or even into IndyCar, into IMSA, into SRO America. There's so many different pieces that you have to put in place to get that to happen. And like you said, 120 grand, I look at 120 grand, I think, damn, that's really reasonable for a year of racing. But that's just the racing part. That's not your travel. That's not your hotel stays. That's not your dinner. That's not your incidentals if you put the car in the wall or someone puts you in the wall or breaks something. So really that 120 grand, you could almost double it.
Yes. And the thing is my thought is, okay, let's say I finally came up with the money and I did it. What am I really going to get for it, right? And you can ask Drake Kemper, who's done 4 years of it and still hasn't won a championship. So he's out $480,000, almost $500,000, still has no championship. He's always tried. He's always been in the hunt. He's always been won races and laid the championship. But like, that is a lot of money out the door, and it's just like, man, I don't know. So hey, if you got it, good for you. And I'm jealous. I wish I was there. But for me, I'm a dad and a real guy. He's got a job and a husband. I got to balance all those things, and that's always been the challenge for me, is really balancing the race team and my marriage and being a dad and my career and writing, all these different things. So. A lot of the columns I've written about Toolshed Engineer for NASA Speed News kind of deals with that. Like, here's how you can save a little bit of money. Here's how you can do it. I've gotten the phone call every once in a while. I got the phone call from Flying Lizard one year, like, hey, you want to run the 25-hour with us? It was the GT4 car. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what an honor. I want to do it. And then when I got the price tag for that seat, I was just like, oh, you've talked to the wrong guy. So I was talking to my brother about it. I'm like, they just want a guy who can afford to do it and won't wreck the car. And he goes, well, they don't know you very well because you can't afford it and you'd probably wreck that car.
See, and that was actually a lot of the reason why I had to kind of stop racing in the seat, because I used to be able to get the phone call, hey, we need a driver. Can you come drive with us? Sure, no problem. All I was out was my plane ticket to the race.
Yeah.
The team took care of everything else, had everything ready for me. I had to show up with my helmet, plane ticket to the race. Then 2008, 2009 happened. Then when racing started really picking back up again, 2010, 2011, hey, can you come to the race with us? Yeah, sure, no problem. Oh, can you bring a check with you for 75 grand as well? No.
Yeah, 75. And some of those deals too, that doesn't even include crash damage. So, when I found out that I had to cover crash damage for a 911, I'm just like, I cannot do that. And that's just me being who I am within my means and not making that financial guilt or strain on my family. And the fact of the matter is that in the end, I already have a clock from the 25 hours. So how much was I going to spend? How much was going to be a risk to get a trophy I already own? It's a risky deal. But, I think for this, amateur drivers who really want to get some great experience, 25 hours is a great spot. You can rent a seat there for anywhere, it depends on the car, between $2,000 to $5,000. And you're getting a bargain for the amount of driving you're going to do in that race.
Honestly, I love endurance racing so much, just for the fact of your seat time to dollar ratio is so great.
Massive.
I remember doing the Western Endurance Racing Championships with NASA, at Willow Springs and Button Willow, and it's such a great time. As soon as you guys are done with that race, let's go party.
Yeah. So we ran the Work Series 2010. We won the E3 class. We have that championship, and that was some of the funnest ever. Just because you race hard for 3 hours, you bang fenders, and then the beer coolers opened up, and we just partied all night long. It was a good time.
Exactly. Now, you're talking about crash damage for like a 911 GT4. Even if you bought race insurance, track insurance for that event to cover you, that's still a $10,000, $15,000 deductible that you'd have to come up with.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, for some guys it's not, but I'm just a government employee, man. That's a lot for me. So I'm very content in the series that I'm in. I want to be the best I can be at the level that I'm at, and we've certainly proved that at Double Nickel 9. But, hey, it is what it is. The thing about racing is that do it wherever you can. Like I said,
Absolutely.
If all you can afford is a friggin' old Honda Civic and run some motocross, then do that, because the racing is still competitive. And the adrenaline spikes your blood, and it's an addictive thing, and do the best you can. And, I had some great times autocrossing back in the day. I've had some great times road racing. One was much less expensive.
No, and, you're saying pretty much the same thing that every pro driver I've had on here. Go out and drive whatever you can. If the opportunity arises, take it. Get out and drive and enjoy it.
For sure, man. Racing is racing, Whether it's Lewis Hamilton at Monaco or it's Rob Krider at Button Willow, you're still just chasing that green flag. You want to get the pole. You want to get the fast lap. You want to lead flag to flag. You want to get a Grand Slam and earn that championship. Go for it.
Really, okay, yeah, you get a driver on Monaco, but at least you get a pass at Button Willow.
Exactly. I passed way more people than Lewis Hamilton ever does. I passed more people in one Lemons race than Lewis Hamilton has passed in his career in F1. Really. That's not even an exaggeration.
No, I know it's not. And it's, especially since, the news that just came out with Vettel not going back to Ferrari.
I know, that was interesting.
Ferrari signing Carlos Sainz.
Yep.
And Daniel Ricciardo over to Renault. Or leaving Renault to go to McLaren. What I was hoping for was Daniel Ricciardo to Ferrari to replace Vettel.
Yep, I think a lot of people wanted to see that.
And, I thought that would have been, I don't want to take anything away from Sainz because he did an incredible job when he got moved over to McLaren. But I thought Ricciardo definitely, and somebody else told me they thought Mick Schumacher might have gotten the call up for the Ferrari seat.
It's a gamble, and we've obviously seen McLaren struggle recently, and it's tough. F1, you roll that dice, what seat you're going to be in, because it's going to make a difference. The equipment makes a difference. I think it makes more of a difference there than it does in the series I'm in, for sure.
No, absolutely. I think Zach Brown's done a really good job with McLaren and has them pointed in the right direction. So, once and hopefully we ever get back to racing this year, we'll definitely see something.
Well, I want to see them be successful. They got an American at the helm. That's kind of cool, so it's good to see him as a CEO running the show, but, it hasn't happened yet.
Not only that, but Zach loves to get in the car and drive. I love, I talk to him every year at the Rolex reunion, and he shows up with some incredible cars. One of my favorite cars.
He does, man.
One of my favorite cars that he shows up with is that Audi IMSA GTU car. Oh, that 5-cylinder turbo.
Awesome.
Oh, it's so beautiful. All-wheel drive.
I think that was one that Hans Stuck drove in the Trans Am Championship, right?
Yep. With the the BBS,
was the man.
The BBS fan wheels and
yes, I know the exact car. Awesome car.
Audi shows up and everyone's like, "Yeah, this thing can't compete." Blah blah blah. It's not going to be able to do anything. It's got all-wheel drive.
Unless it rains.
Well, no, they went out and they dominated the 87, 88 season in that Audi, and then they're like, "Okay, well now we got to ban all-wheel drive."
That's banned. Yeah, you can't have that. We can't have that. You can't have these foreigners coming to America under Trans Am series and beating us with an all-wheel drive car. That's sacrilegious.
Exactly. So, Rob, at the end of every show, I give the guests their time to thank whoever they need to thank. A lot of the pro drivers have, the people, their wives or this or that. But I know being an amateur driver in NASA, there's a lot more to thank. So you know what? This is your time. Go through it. Have fun.
All right, Chris. Well, I got a big long list, so here we go. So we'll start with obviously Tactical Ops Brewing Double Nickel 9, very good IPA, 10.9% ABV. We give this to our competitors to drink on Friday night, so they throw up on their helmets Saturday morning, and then I get the poll, which is a pretty good strategy. I found it over the years. You got to check out Cadet Blues; it will make you laugh. I guarantee it. It's a very funny book. Really good car stuff in there. Go to YouTube, watch Double Down, awesome documentary about amateur racing. And then I will give you the full-blown kick-butt list of people that have helped Double Nickel 9 Motorsports. Okay, here we go. In alphabetical order, here we go. AEM Electronics, Auto Power Safety, Bay Area Express Delivery, B&G Tires, Cadet Blues and Novel, Carbotech Brakes, Economy Stock Feed, iBox Springs, Emergency Suppression Systems, HA Motorsports, Hasport Performance Motor Mounts, Ioport Racing Supplies, Insane Shafts, J&B Farms, Kingpin Machine, Motion Control Suspension, Napa Valley Muffler, Mountaintop, Olson Auto Body, Performance and Frame Tuning, Phase 2 Motor Trend, Pro Speed Brake Fluid, Samson Racing Communications, Sanger Tire, Skunk 2 Racing, Smart Racing Products, they make really cool alignment gear, Speed Factory Racing, Synchrotech Transmissions, Tackle Loss Brewing, TM Performance Machine Shop, and Unorthodox Racing. And all the people that helped me out on my racing team, and definitely call them and help them out, whatever you can do.
That's awesome. Rob, where can people find you, keep up with Double Nickel 9?
So go to team559.com. Lots of stories there, lots of cool videos. You can find Double Down there. Lots of articles from Speed News to help you out if you're coming up in racing and learning your thing. You can follow me on basically Krider Racing on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. So check it out, team559.com. I'd love to see you there.
All right, sounds good. And you can follow us at ubertothepits.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ubertothepits. Rob, thank you so much. This interview will also be airing up on YouTube soon. I will also have links for Double Down with that for you. So,
awesome, brother. Thanks,
Rob,
Chris. You're the man.
Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure not slumming with you for this time. And
the slum episode.
Hopefully we'll all be able to get to the track soon.
All right, man. Take care, Chris.
All right.